Okay, in this video we are going to be working on our Chapter 4 exercises, and we're going to walk through each one of them. I'm going to move us over to the book here really quick so we can get the description for the first one. And this one says, create a class named Form Letter Writer that includes two overloaded methods named Display Salutation. The first method takes one string parameter that represents a customer's last name and displays the salutation, Dear Mr. or Mrs., followed by the last name. The second method accepts two string parameters that represent a first and last name, and it displays the greeting Dear, followed by a name, a space, and the last name. After each salutation, display the rest of a short business letter, thank you for your recent order, or whatever you want to put in, and then write a main method that tests each overloaded method and save the file as Form Letter Writer. Now, of course, I'm just going to say right off the bat, any of these applications, you can do a hard-coded version, which is basically what the author wants here, or you can do an application that prompts people for input. The smarter thing, though, and the reason he does this very often is you write the application, and then you do the same one, but you accept user input, is because when you write a program, that's how you do it. You set up programs that test themselves, and then you find ways to bring the data in. You make sure your logic works first, then you can do the fancy stuff. Okay, so let's dig into writing some code here. Jumping over to Eclipse. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close all these files here so we don't have to look at them. And then I'm going to create a new Java project. And this one we are going to call, let's keep it really simple like we did before, Chapter 4, Exercise 1. Now I do want to make an interesting point here, because I had somebody online ask me this question. I've been making a separate project for each exercise. And the question that I got from one of my students was, can't I just make one project and put all the exercises inside of it? What do you guys think the answer would be? Absolutely. All right. So should I do that? Just to show you the approach used. So I've got a name for it, and there's our folder. And now we're going to create a new class file. I'm leaving the package blank. Now, just so you guys understand what the package is, and I don't know if I really did a good job of explaining this in the previous weeks, but the package file would be kind of the equivalent of using a solution file in Visual Studio when you're bundling together projects. Now, I want you to think about that as a conception. Usually when you create a programming project, it'll have all its own resources, its own form, buttons, variables, class files, whatever it is. But it's possible to write an application that's part of a package that is really many applications stuck together. That's why we use a package file, because, I'll put it like this. Think about like an application like Microsoft Word. Do you think that Microsoft Word does all of its work with one executable? Or one library of functions? No, absolutely not. So it really is a large package of programs. And then those programs often get reused. Sometimes they don't update certain things for a long time because they don't need to. It works quite well. Sometimes they change it. Right? But the stuff that works well, you can move to the other project and it can make it part of that package or solution, and you just carry on with your work. All right, so let's create the first one here, and we're just going to call it Chapter 4, Exercise 1. No, actually they want us to give it a specific name, don't they? What do they want us to call it? Form Letter Writer. All right, we do want a main method. All right, and I want to get rid of this right away. If you guys aren't in the habit of it, you might want to consider doing, putting your name at the top. And here's where you can do chapter 4, exercise 1. Okay, so that would be a way that you can denote it so that you know which one it is. All right, let's go ahead and try to figure this out here. So we're going to have our main method, but then we want two overloaded methods named display salutation. So I'm going to just go ahead and step outside of the main method, and I'm just going to type display salutation. Okay, and I'm doing this in advance for a reason, because we're going to do it twice, right? Now, given the instructions that we have, these are just going to display messages. So they're not going to return anything, right? So that helps me decide what I'm going to put in front of it. Well, first of all, I'm going to put public in front of it because I want everything to be able to access it. So it's not going to return anything. So we can put in static and void. It's not going to change, and it's not going to return anything. All right, and we are going to do this twice. The first method takes one string parameter that represents a customer's last name. So we know we're going to have a string, and let's just abbreviate and call it L name. Okay? Then, since I know that, I'm going to create another one of these with the same name and all the same settings, and then realize I'm going to add another parameter to it, another overload possibility. Let's read the instructions. The second method accepts two string parameters that represent first and last name. So here I'm going to keep string last name, but in front of it, I'm going to change this to F name, right? So now I'm passing in first name, last name. All right. In addition, we know that we're going to do an output. So I'm going to do system.out.println. And they told us very explicitly what to put in here. The first one, that takes the one string parameter, it will display the salutation, Dear Mr. or Mrs., followed by the last name. Okay. Dear Mr. or Mrs. Space in there. Let's concatenate. L name. And then I'm putting in another little snippet of text, a comma, and then we'll close it out with our semicolon. The second one accepts two, and then it displays the greeting, Dear, followed by the first name, a space, and the last name. So once again, we can do a little bit of brevity here by doing a little copy paste, and it says Dear plus F name plus a space plus last name and then a comma. All right. Additionally, it says after each salutation, display the rest of a short business letter. Thank you for your recent order. That's just an example. So we're going to do that with another method. Now I could just, we're doing something really simple here, right? So I could just like hard code it in the main method. But what I want to show you is that you can write a bit of a program that's going to have like certain components that are always generated. So let's just go ahead and create a new method. And what should we call this? Display letter. We're not going to send anything to it. This is going to be one of those things that just does what it does. Actually, watch what I'm going to do here, because I'm going to add a couple more lines than what the book has. But before I do that, I'm going to copy a blank version of it. And actually, I'm going to do a couple of interesting things here, because I'm assuming that we're going to write a letter. It's going to output this, and then usually you don't put the letter text right below it. You want a space in between. So I'm just going to do a system out print line, and I'm actually going to leave the parentheses blank, because I'm not going to put any text in there. It just gives us a new line. And you don't have to do this, just keep that in mind. I'm just kind of giving you ideas of what can be done. And that's probably adequate. I'm probably taking it a little too far, just to give you the idea of what's possible. All right, so now I'm going to jump up to our main program body, and I'm just going to do some hard-coded values. So I'm just going to do display salutation, and I'm going to send in one parameter. In this case, it's going to be a last name. So we'll just do Smith, or whatever you want to put in there. And then we're going to go ahead and just use the first one to display the letter. So we're going to do display letter. And that one just does its work without needing anything inside of there. And then we're going to do display salutation again. And this time we're going to send in two things, and we're going to send in John, comma, Smith. And then once again we're going to do this. And that should really kind of do it for this program. It accomplishes all the objectives. And we actually took it a little bit further than we needed to. So the entirety of the program then is on the screen right now. Yeah. Let's go ahead and give it a run and see what happens. Hopefully everything is good. We don't have any underlines. I hit the little play button there. All right, and you can see, right, dear Mr. or Mrs. Smith, so this is the first one. Thank you for your recent order. This order will ship to your location, yada, yada, yada. And then we did the second one where we sent in first and last name. And granted, these are very primitive examples, but really the point is to demonstrate overloading a method. And so basically it is allowed in Java to name something the same thing, giving it a different number of arguments and have it perform different actions as a result of it. It's a very powerful thing. Now we're going to move on to exercise 2. In exercise 2, we're going to create a class named billing that includes 3 overloaded compute bill methods, and then each one of them has a certain thing that it does. I'm not going to read each one now. Let's just create it first. So we're going to create a class called billing. So we're going to do that. I'm going to come back over to our source folder, right-click, new class, calling it billing. It does need a main method. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to call it chapter 4, exercise 2. All right, and then we're going to write 3 methods called compute bill. So I'm just going to do that right here, compute bill. All right. Now let's take a look at the instructions a little bit further. So the first one's going to receive a single parameter, and it represents the price of one photo book ordered. Add 8% tax and return the total due. So we are returning something. All right. So that's going to tell us how we're going to write the little precursor here. So it is going to be public. It is going to be static. Right. What if you're returning a tax amount? What type should it be? Yeah. You want it to be an int. You want to be able to calculate cents, pennies, right? So it's going to. Yeah. You would want it to be a double. All right. Now, in terms of receiving a parameter, what would you think it would receive for working with money? As I answer your question. We have to be able to accept decimal values. Okay, so if you want, we can call that price, but it's the data type is price. I mean, data type is double, excuse me. Okay. All right, so we got compute bill, and we know we're going to have a return statement in it, so I'm just going to type in a return. And I don't know what we're going to call that yet, but I'm just going to put in a semicolon. All right, so we're going to have to take the price and add 8% tax. All right, so I'm going to just bring up my calculator really quick and just kind of do a real quick demonstration for you guys. What's our sales tax around here? 5.1. Okay, you guys are lucky. I got to pay an extra 0.5% at home. I am. 5.6% up there. And then, do you guys know that if you go to like a restaurant or a hotel, it's even higher? It's almost 10%. Oh, well, I thought it was like 8 or 9%, but yeah, if you go to a restaurant or a hotel, it's higher. So if you ever go out to eat with somebody in Milwaukee, you try to calculate what your like how much you're paying for your food. So if you get like a $10 hamburger, you got to add 10% to that, and then add your tip. So you're paying a tip on 11, not on 10, that kind of thing. All right, separate story. Probably shouldn't be in the video, but there it is. All right, so let's say I buy something for $10, and then I would multiply times 0.08, right? So I get 80 cents tax. Right? But we need to return the total price. So really the formula for doing that is whatever you're throwing in times 1 point 1.08. That'll return the total for you. Okay, so I know that the author most likely would hard code the tax amount into a final. That's up to you. Okay, I would just hard code the amount because we're just doing kind of an example here, but it would not be a bad idea because if you think about if you're writing a big application where that tax calculation might appear 100 times in the application, you can just change it in one spot instead of having to manually go through and find all the 0.08s. So, but I'm not going to do that here. So what we're going to do then is we're just going to return, well, we're going to declare a new variable called called total. That's a double. I'm going to declare it and populate it right away. So I'm just going to take price times 1.08. And then what are we going to return? Total. You want to see an even cooler trick? I can just do the return right here. It doesn't like it though, does it? Yeah, it doesn't like it. Okay. All right. Since it doesn't like it doesn't want me to declare it and return it all at the same time. All right, whatever. It is boring. All right, let's go ahead and copy this because it wants us to do this, what, 3 times or 4 times? 3 times. The second one is going to receive 2. One's going to be the price and the quantity ordered. All right, so we're going to receive the price, and then the quantity ordered is going to be what? A double? It's going to be, yeah, it's going to be an integer. It's a counting number. And I'm just going to call it QTY. And it's going to return, multiply 2 values, add the tax, and return the total due. All right, so the way that we're going to do that we can do it in one equation. But it might make sense to do something like this, where we might do like subtotal. So the subtotal might be the price times the quantity. And then the total would be the subtotal times the tax amount. Let's move on to the third one. So we get 3 parameters: the price, quantity ordered, and a coupon value. Multiply the quantity, reduce the result by the coupon value, and then add a % tax. So now how do coupons usually work? Yeah, take it out before the tax. And those usually are in form of what? Yeah, typically a percentage. So a double is a good choice. Or, you know what? You could actually send it an integer and then multiply, right? Or you can just say $5 off. There's really no right or wrong here. It's a matter of how you interpret the problem. Which way do you guys want to do? $5 off? 20% off? Okay, let's do 20%. But we're not going to hard code that here. That's going to be something that's determined when we send it in. Okay. All right. So we're going to add another parameter here, and we decided it's going to be a double. And we also want to call it, yeah, let's call it discount. That's good. All right, so anything here need to change? Could I do something like this? what would be the math here? See, this is part of the fun of it. Be subtotal minus what? Is my logic right here? So if I buy one thing for $10, my subtotal is 10. I multiply that subtotal times the discount, 20%, and that's how much? 2. Subtract 2 from 10, that gives me my correct subtotal. Then I take that subtotal multiplied by the tax, and I get my new total and return it. All right, last piece that we have to do is we have to write a main method that tests all three. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to double click there to copy the name. And I'm going to paste it. And for the first one, we just need a price. So I'm going to throw in, I don't know, $10.99. For the second one, we are going to do price and quantity. So $10.99, we'll do 2 of them. Then for the last one, we're going to do price, quantity, and discount. Remember, the discount's going to be in form of a percentage. And I'm just going to do 20% and save it. So the program's going to run. It's going to test each one of the overloaded methods and return values. So what would be the result of the first calculation? And the reason I'm doing this is so that you can basically predict what's going to happen. You should know what's going to happen. Don't just take it at face value that it's right. Many years back, running some retail businesses, I would program the cash registers. And whoever had set them up before me programmed it incorrectly. And the way we discovered it was when we would do our books. When we do our books and calculate the sales taxes, you do the state of Wisconsin forms, and their calculations were off from ours. I was like, well, what's going on here? Why are we falling short? And it was just all the way the data was entered. It wasn't entered correctly. So. Oh, you know what? You know, Cindy Lou, that is very astute. Yeah, we do need a way to display it. All right, so we could just do this. Now we could write a method that will do the display for us. Should we do that? That's really the best practice. Why not? So let's do public static void, and then we'll just call it display total. Now, we're probably going to send something into it, right? All right. What are we going to send into it? Whatever the total is coming back, right? So that's going to be in the form of what sort of number? It's a double. And I'm just going to call it, yeah, I'll just call it total. It doesn't matter. I wouldn't consider that best practice, of course. All right, we'll just do a little display system out. Now, if you were really going to be good about this, you would probably do something like, this is how much it costs, this is the tax, this is the total. Maybe we should do that, okay. Yeah, you know what though? Let's not. You know what, let's actually go ahead and do that. The last thing, display total is just going to display the total. And so I'm just going to, the output's just going to be this. And I'm not worried about doing the financial formatting on it. You guys can add that in if you want a good grade. Now, if I'm going to send something to display total, don't I also need somewhere to put it? Because if I'm calling a method that returns a value, it requires somewhere to put it. So here's what we have to do again. We're going to have to declare double. Let's call it grand total. Or how about your total? The total, your total, whatever. And then we're going to need to do something like this. Oops, not there, here. And I'm just going to be reusing the same variable. And then we would run this after each one. And then I'm going to add a little something to all of this. So we declared the variable, we run it, grab the value, display it. Run it, grab the value, display, etc. The one thing that we should do though is let's add a little output inside each method. What did they order, a photo book? I should say plus sales tax. I'm totally second guessing everything I'm doing here, so don't copy me too much, because you're copying a work in progress. No, actually, I think I like it down here. I think that's good. And then I'm just going to take this and expand it for each one of these. You know, and I guess if you want, you could do something like this. I know, a lot of excess stuff here. And really what this should make you think about is like what goes into it. Like next time you guys go to like the grocery store or something and look at the receipt, there's somebody that programs all that stuff in. This is very much the approach they use. So, you know, I guess if you wanted, we could get kind of persnickety about this and actually save the sales tax as a separate variable and then output that too. But you guys should do that. I'm doing an example. Right? And then for the last one, parentheses around this just to be safe. Right? And then you can even be more polite and totally calculate it out and add it there. Once again, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. But if you were thinking about this was like a cash register, you know, program, like the detail that you would want to have there, like you would indicate subtotal, the what it is, and you got to be like very verbose about what you're doing. I'm being very abbreviated here. All right, and even though this is primitive, we're going to give it a shot. I don't have any underlines, and it should run. Let's give it a shot. All right, so let's take a look at this output. You ordered one photo book for $10.99 plus sales tax 8%, total $1186.92. Of course, you can format that. The next one, you ordered two photo books for $10.99. You got a subtotal plus tax, and that looks like about the right amount. And then the third one, you ordered two, subtotal less a 20% discount, plus sales tax of 8%. And really what you should do with something like this, folks, is you should, if you're like doing it for a real application, you would try to format it as nicely as you could. And you would not only be verbose with all the output, you would also try to get your formatting all lined up. And one of the ways that you would do that would be with tabs, you know, just for example. And it would take a little bit of planning and practice to get it. All right. I'm going to end this video here, and we're going to move on to the next exercise in the next video.